Hello! Right, today we're going to be making a cherry chocolate and coconut tray bake. This makes 16 small portions. Obviously, it's not healthy. So the Eat Well guide tells us that we should only be eating these sort of things in small portions and little and often. So that's fine. This is a, Friday recipe, weekend recipe, should be fine. So these are our ingredients. We have got some desiccated coconut, we've got some white chocolate, 2 eggs, some cherries and some sugar. Okay, it just so happens that these are the right quantities, so we'll only be needing to measure our sugar. So the first thing that we need to do is switch our oven on, and for this recipe it's 160 degrees if you have a fan oven where it's getting hotter, or 180 degrees if it's a normal oven. We need to line our baking tray. Now I want to show you these 2 baking trays. I know there's a specific measurement on the recipe, but don't panic too much. There's 2 different tins. Either of these are perfectly fine for what we're making. Obviously this will make a fatter tray bake, and this will make a thinner one. And lining is really straightforward. If we were going to use this tray, which we're not, you'd cut this down more and then just put it in and fit it in. As you put the ingredients in, it'll weigh it down, so don't worry too much about cutting and measuring. We're not going to be using this tray because I want to do slightly thinner ones. Now, if you were going to use this tray, obviously it would take a different time to cook in the oven, so you'd need to check it. So it would be fatter, so you'd be watching the top. This one is obviously going to be thinner and larger, so this will cook quicker. So all we're doing is just that. And again, when the ingredients go in, that will hold the paper in place. The next instructions are that we need to mix our ingredients together. Now, if you add dry ingredients and then you add the wet on top, then what tends to happen is you end up with dry bits. So in my experience, if you're mixing things together, put the wet ingredients in first and then add the dry ingredients on top and combine. So the first thing we're going to put in is our eggs. Okay, we've got just 2 standard eggs. Tap on there, open up, let in. So once you've got your eggs, I would give them a quick stir. Quick whisk even. And then we're adding our ingredients. We're going to weigh the sugar separately and then add it in. So our recipe says that we need 85 grams of sugar, or 2/3 of a cup. So again, we're putting our scales on, we're zeroing it, we're making sure that it's on grams, and we need 85 grams of this. There we go, perfect. So then we'll move our scales out of the way, bring our eggs back, put our sugar in. Now for the coconut, we need 200 grams, and we're really lucky that this bag actually weighs 200 grams. So we don't have to reweigh, which is great. So there's our coconut. In like that. So we've got our eggs, we've got our sugar, we've got our coconut in. Now we need to add in our cherries and our milk chocolate. Now I'm just going to put that out of the way just for a second. I'm going to scooch this along. I'm going to talk about the cherries. Now the recipe calls for 20 cherries cut in half. Now there's 2 ways that we can do this. Now, as you can see, I have a blue plaster on because we have some new knives and I've just accidentally cut myself. Now, what we don't want is for anybody younger or older even to cut themselves. So I'm going to show you 2 ways that you can do this. So you can use scissors to cut these in half, really straightforward. And you just do that. That's how you can cut them in half. Alternatively, you can use a cutting technique called the bridge. Now, while we're learning to cook together, I'll be talking about this a lot. There's 2 methods for cutting. There's the bridge and there's the claw, and the claw is when you hold something. Obviously, for cutting something small like a cherry, we're going to be using the bridge technique, and we're going to be doing that. And it keeps the knife away from our fingers so we don't end up with blue plasters on. We need 20 of them, 20 halved cherries, which we've done. You're going to be putting them in the bowl, just like so. And then we're moving on to the chocolate. Again, we don't have to weigh this because it's 200 grams. It's unopened, so nobody's managed to pinch any of it. We need this in chunks. So the easiest way of doing it is to break it while it's in the packet. She says. Which is fine. If you want it in smaller lumps, we can cut it again after we've then taken it out of the packet using a knife. We'll have a look and see how it looks once it's out of the packet. Yeah, those look to be quite large chunks, so I'm going to cut those again. And again, I'm going to use the bridge for doing this. So I'm just going to get my pieces of chocolate and cut them in half like that. Again, you might want to do it again, but for this recipe, I'd like to keep the chocolates a similar size to the halves of cherries. So that's probably about right. So I'll cut this up and then we'll add it. We're just going to mix the last of our ingredients in. So we've got our chocolate going into our mixture now. And obviously at this point, some people might sneak a bit of chocolate, but I'm being well behaved today, so I'm not going to be. So, got that in. And again, the wet ingredients are on the bottom. So we're just combining them all and giving it a good stir. Once it's all beautifully combined, you get your baking tray with your parchment and you're going to put your ingredients in. And again, we are wanting this to be spread out evenly. If it's thicker on one end and thinner on the other, then that end's going to burn and that end's going to be too thick. So it's really important that we spread this out evenly. And again, we want our paper to sit in there. So we're just going to push our ingredients and they will keep that baking paper in position. So, and I'm just using the back of the spoon to flatten out the ingredients. And with the cherries, try and make sure that they're sort of spread out a little bit. You don't want somebody having a whole mouthful of cherries and then somebody else not having any. And again with the chocolate, unless you want that by design. A bit naughty. Right, so we're pressing that down. And once you're satisfied that it's all even and spread out, we're going to put it in the oven. Now it says for 20 minutes, so we're going to put it in and we're probably going to check it at about the 10-minute mark. And the reason for this is we've used a different size tray than the one recommended in the recipe, but we've managed to put our oven trays in so that we'll be able to look through the oven door and see how it's doing. Now, because this has got quite a high sugar content in, we're imagining that the sugars are going to caramelise as they're cooking. So we should even be able to smell when it's nearly cooked, because we'll get that lovely caramel smell in the air. We've put eggs in this to bind the mixture and to put everything together. Now, when this cooks, the protein in the egg will coagulate, so it'll turn from a liquid, which is obviously our liquid eggs, into a solid. And that's part of the science of cooking, and that's coagulation. This is ready to go in the oven now. So we're 10 minutes into cooking and I'm just going to have a look. I'm not going to open the oven door. I'm just having a see. No, it's not looking caramelised. It's not looking lovely and toasty on top. So we'll come back in probably 5 minutes and have a look. And if it's ready, we'll take it out. I can smell that this is cooked. I'm going to take these out of the oven and I can see it's lovely and golden round the edges and it's getting toasty on top. As you can see, it's lovely and golden round the edges. It's got some golden bits on top. This could have stayed in for a little bit longer, but I think this is fine to come out now. I'm going to leave it in the tin just for a little while, and that's because the white chocolate is going to be quite soft, and if I move it, it is likely to sort of to go everywhere. So I'm going to let it cool in the tin, and then afterwards I'm going to take it out and cut it. So this is our cherry, chocolate and coconut tray bake. It's cold, so what we're going to do now is turn it out, turn this over, and we're going to cut it. Now this makes 16 pieces, so if we're going to do that, we'll just, you hear that lovely crunch. Now with the knife, you see again, I'm keeping my fingers away because we don't want to get cut, keeping them away from the sharp end. So cutting that through now. Now if you wanted to make smaller pieces of this, I just wanted to do those. Again, you can cut them like that and do them small. These are very sweet. So again, for a child's portion, perhaps I would cut them again. So I hope you enjoy them. Yeah, that's a good size. So I hope you enjoy them, and I'll show you how to do something else next week.